It is the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name's Sammy James. Welcome to the show. Today we are looking back at Fulham's 2-1 victory up in Wolverhampton. And as you might be able to tell from my slightly croaky voice, I had an excellent time at Molineux. We'll be looking back at that game and then looking forward to the small matter of Manchester United in the FA Cup 5th round at Old Trafford on Sunday. Oh, it's big. It's big. And it's only right that I'm joined by Elizabeth Barnard in what is a huge day, a huge week in Fulham Football Club. Hello.
Hi, Sammy. Thank you for having me.
I mean, Liz, before we do anything, before we do 3-word reviews, which I know is like the customary starting point, have you come down off cloud 9 yet? After seeing your one true love in life, Ryan Sessegnon.
Yeah, that's how I describe him.
Score with a note the opening 60 seconds. It was exciting enough that he was playing for you yesterday. For him then to score within 60 seconds was... I mean, you're in tears.
I'm in tears already. I was emotional when the lineup came out, and once I get started off, I find it really hard to turn it off. And then when with my lovely friends, of which you were one, around me as Ryan Sessegnon was put through, and everyone like clutched me, it was like, oh, it's the moment. Like, and then when he scored, it just became this group hug melee. I was both incredibly present and having this out-of-body experience where I was like, I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life. I don't want to be dramatic, but truly one of the great Fulham away days for me.
Oh, honestly, it was one of those, like, obviously I was like really happy that Fulham were 1-0 up, and I'm happy that Ryan Sessegnon scored, but genuinely, my first thought was, Elizabeth, he scored! It's you! It's your moment! You've gone on about Ryan Sessegnon since he arrived. You famously predicted back in the summer that he'd make the England squad. Maybe this is the long road to recovery.
It's coming. It's coming, the call-up.
Lewis Hall, Marl Lewis Skelly, none of them. Ryan Sessegnon is the left-back solution for England. Maybe he's the left-sided solution for Fulham. Before we get into any of that, can we do some 3-word reviews from last night's game?
We can, and it won't surprise you to know that quite a lot of them are on a similar theme.
Okay.
And actually, I always say the 3-word reviews are banging, but this time they are really, really special. I usually pick out only a couple, but I had to pick out more. So we'll start off with a non-Ryan Sessegnon one, actually, from Chris, who gave us fish and chip for Rodrigo Muniz celebration for his chip. Love that. And then James Wilson with first Molineux success. That's great. Yeah. Lovely pun. Kyle Beery with ready Sess goal.
Yeah.
Jack Parker, no sessing about. And then a few funnier ones I thought we should bring in. So we've spoken about how Dom Betts wasn't at the game, which meant we'd win, and we did. And it was also Drew Heatley's birthday. So it was Drew Heatley versus history. Terrible history at Molineux. So we have from Nate, thanks Dom Betts. And we have from Joe, Drew beat history, which I loved both of those. And then finally, a slightly concerning one, I think, from Bo Shells, who gave us stop over-analysising everything, which is exactly what we're about to do.
Yes. No, we're not going to fall into the trap today of discussing whether Europe is on or whether Europe isn't on. We're just going to be present in the moment. We're going to remember what a special day or special night Tuesday was up in Molineux. I mean, it was one of those that, like, I tried to convince you and George that I feel like we should try Wolverhampton. We haven't sold many tickets, and I was like, there is a way back. You took a bit of convincing. You didn't take that much convincing, neither of you, in fairness. But what a night. It was one. I sometimes just love the unexpected treats with Fulham. You go up to the big games. We'll go up on Sunday, and that's a big game. And I'm expecting that could be a memorable one. You don't need to necessarily sell that. But Wolves on a Tuesday night, your natural thought is to be like, what's the point? That's going to be rubbish. So it's delicious, especially for the 1,000 or so Fulham fans that went. It's not easy to get to Wolverhampton on a Tuesday night. So it was a brilliant reward that the team put in that kind of performance.
Yeah, definitely. The away end wasn't super full last night. There were quite a lot of gaps, and obviously, like, doing a midweek away is always quite difficult with work and stuff. And I was thinking on the train home at midnight while I was trying to sleep on the Avanti, I was thinking, if we had lost, I would be so miserable right now knowing that I'm going into work tomorrow morning on not enough sleep and da, da, da. But the performance that the team put in, when we saw the lineup, we were a little bit concerned, but the performance the team put in and the experience of those 2 goals as well, like I'm sure we'll go into both of them in more detail. It just felt so special. Such a special away day. Yeah. And one of those moments I think that we'll look back on at the end of the season.
Yeah, I 100% think so. I mean, no win at Molineux in the league since 1985. It's another one of kind of like the curses that has been broken. I think it's now just Turf Moor that remains. If we win there, if we get them in the cup or beat them next season in the league, presumably they've got a good chance of promotion. Then finally, I think Marco will have completed broken all the curses. It was an interesting lineup though from Marco. 5 changes. I maybe you could say, after the performance at Palace, that the team needed a shake-up. That's one way of looking at it. But for me, it was one eye on the cup. Yeah. And it was rotation. Mm-hmm. And that is so rare that teams in the Premier League, unless, maybe you would do it for a semi-final or a final, but to be like, we've got a 5th round match and actually we're going to potentially jeopardise a league match for that. Mm-hmm. I was a big fan of it, but you don't see it very often. Yeah,
I agree with you. We were enjoying a delicious Thai meal when the lineup came through, and it was a shock to everyone around the table that it was what had happened, going for 5 at the back and going for a really heavily rotated lineup. No Jimenez, no Robinson, no Bassi. Everyone was a bit uncertain, and I think it's difficult. Like, the story of yesterday could have been very different, but when the lineup dropped at 6:15, I thought, I'm pleased, even if we lose tonight, that we're prioritising the cup. And the players that we've not been able to rotate, and I don't want to call him out because I don't think he's a bad player and I don't think he's lacking effort or anything like that, but someone like Timmy Castagna looks just knackered a lot of the time. So I think it is worth making those changes because obviously the schedule is catching up with some of the team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's we've only been playing like every week, but Marco, I've felt like since he arrived at Fulham, has been such a stickler for rest time between games. And I remember in the Championship, he was able to successfully move a couple of games in agreement with the other team because he felt like Wednesday to Saturday wasn't enough preparation time. I think it makes life very, very difficult for him and his team. But yeah, I think, we've kind of maybe against Wigan, we're a bit surprised that Marco didn't take the cup that seriously, but I think it just shows that Sunday must be everything for Marco. But look, it's a gamble that worked, right? Because actually the team looked great. Yeah. And it was refreshing. It was, obviously we talked about Sess and that was a moment, but I thought Cuenca looked good.
Yeah.
I mean, Muniz obviously looked great as well. I think all of the changes kind of paid off.
Yeah, I feel like we rode our luck a little bit at times, but having said that, I think we deserved to win that game. And we did look fresh and we did look like we shocked Wolverhampton. I mean, the speed of the goals is such an obvious thing to point out, but the fact that we were able to start so fast in both halves and score within the first 90 seconds of each half, that's crazy. Like, I listened back to I don't know if you've watched the Gentleman Jim comms for both the goals, but he's still they're still getting settled in the game. After half time, he's like, oh, let me just move my pie, actually, because we could watch it. Oh, whoa, Muniz is through and he's scored. So it was, we were really able to shock them, I thought.
Yeah, it is. Also, like, your Vitor Pereira, I mean, I don't know too much about Vitor Pereira, but he seems like quite a methodical manager. He seems similar-ish kind of mould to Marco in a few ways, and not just because they're both Portuguese. There's no way, and I know that football clubs will have intelligence on all teams, and they'll probably have multiple scenarios that they'll be accounting for of how Fulham might have been lining up. I bet you Vitor Pereira's team at whatever time it was, 6:15, when that lineup dropped, thought we weren't prepared for this because no one, even us, and I like to think, or anyone talked about the possibility of Marco changing it anywhere near so heavily, and to then also not just change personnel, but to change formation.
Yeah.
And it was a 5 at the back. There was a bit of just confusion as to whether it would be, but it was, for the most part, a 5, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
Yeah, and it was kind of weird because you then had like, I didn't really understand where Andreas was playing. He was kind of on the left, but he was kind of central. Adama was kind of up front, but kind of on the right. It was kind of, apart from Muniz, I couldn't work out really where any of those front three were playing.
Yeah, Andreas was at his best yesterday, I thought. I mean, we could shout out quite a lot of those players across the pitch and say they had show-stopping performances. But yeah, it felt like Andreas was everywhere and really decisive for both goals as well. I thought he had an absolutely incredible performance. Yeah,
it was a little bit concerning that mid-period of the first half. Like, when Wolves scored, it was fully deserved, right? Like, there'd been several warnings before that where Wolves had moments in the box that Fulham had just got away with it. Like, I actually was pretty disappointed come half-time that we didn't kind of put our foot down and really like get them by the choke, because we'd got such an amazing start, and then I felt like we just kind of went 1-0 up, this is lovely. Expecting that a team fighting for their lives wouldn't actually try and come back into it.
We were riding the high of that emotion that we just, but yeah, the goal was coming, and going into the half 1-1, I was a bit like, I did think we could have pressed more. I thought a draw was fair at half time. Having said that, we didn't have too long to be licking our wounds, did we?
No. I mean, I can't work out what's more impressive about the second goal. Is it Adama's pass or is it Muniz's finish? Because both, for me, are world class.
Well, I'm going to pitch that it's Muniz's finish.
Okay.
But I loved the pass, obviously. But on the finish, I thought that with Muniz, we so rarely see that level of control with the ball. And the way that he takes it, he doesn't have to faff about as he so often does. And he sees Sarr coming, and it would be so easy for him to put that ball in the wrong place. We've seen it time and time again. Try and shoot in a more traditional sense and have it blocked. He saw what he needed to do, and off it flew over him. And that is the kind of goal that I would love to see my strikers scoring.
See, I'm going to argue that the more impressive thing was Adama's pass, because I think Adama, George actually described it beautifully on the quick take when he said it was a perfectly placed, perfectly weighted snooker shot. It was almost just begging Muniz to put it in, and whatever Muniz chose there, he obviously did execute the dink perfectly, but I think Muniz could have gone round the goalkeeper. I think he could have gone to the keeper's side. I think Muniz had so many options of what he could have done there. He nailed it for what it's worth, and he definitely picks the most finesse option. I will not deny you that, but I just think that pass is outrageous. A centimetre further, a centimetre further away, and Sarr picks it up, a centimetre closer to the defender, and it's just cut out. It is. And the thing about Adama, I find quite funny, is
one of the many.
He's obviously just a brute force machine. I enjoyed Anthony Robinson's appearance on the Ben Foster Fozcast, where he talks about how Adama basically just lives in the gym. That is all he is. He is just like brute force. He has the touch of a fairy, though, like when he needs to. Like, loves just like dinked little crosses, perfectly weighted, but I don't know. It's like a rugby player that can also do ballet. Like, it's it's just...
That's a funny analogy.
Yeah. Something about him. He has actually, like, everyone sees him as just this like running machine, but actually he really does have a nice little soft touch when he needs to.
Yeah. I feel like with Adama, I'm a bit scarred from the moments where I've seen him touch it and it not go so well this season, but I don't disagree with you that the pass was absolutely fantastic. Just to clarify, I think they're both fantastic components of a beautiful goal. The only bad thing was the fact that Muniz ran away from the away fans and celebrated in the corner where the away fans weren't, rather than the corner where we were all chanting his name.
There weren't many of us. Maybe he just didn't know where we were.
We were singing pretty loudly for him throughout the game. To be fair,
it was a great noise. It wasn't a big attendance last night, but for the Fulham fans were fantastic last night. And I saw quite a lot of Wolves fans saying, like, wow, we managed to let the 50 Fulham fans that came to Molineux out sing the. We did well. It was not big in numbers, but it was a really fun away end.
Yeah, it was a lovely, lovely away end.
Then for the rest of the second half, what I think impressed me most about yesterday is I feel like so many times when Fulham have had a narrow lead, we've been holding on. And it's been one of those where you're like, your heart's in your mouth for the entire 45 minutes as Fulham just desperately look to cling on. But actually yesterday, notwithstanding the fact we missed a few chances, which we'll come on to make it 3-1, but actually Fulham didn't need to make it 3-1 because I don't really remember Wolves doing an awful lot that actually got me that concerned in the second half.
Yeah, there were a few Leno moments from corners, but they were all and defenders moments from corners. And I thought Diop was fabulous yesterday as well. An absolute titan. He is making a bid for a starting spot if I've ever seen one. But there weren't clear-cut chances. Leno had a great game, but I didn't think he had a particularly impressive game because of the lack of things that he needed to do.
Yeah, I just felt like there was a huge amount of control, and it must be what partially appeals Marco to the five at the back.
Absolutely.
There does just feel like, although I do think it stifles us going forward a bit, he must just love that fact of when we are in the lead, the fact that it just felt like Wolves were just... They could have had another 45 minutes, and I just didn't really feel like they were going to get through, especially with players like Diop. And I thought Cuenca looked good too. I think and Anderson stood up well to Strand Larsen. It just felt really, really solid.
Yeah, I agree.
Couple of missed chances.
Oh God!
The biggest one, Raul Jimenez.
The two biggest ones, Raul Jimenez.
Yeah, the real one was when he was through 1-on-1, about maybe 20 minutes left, I think. It was really weird because everyone thought he was offside. Yeah, and I just can't work out whether he thought he was offside.
I really think he thought he was offside, so he didn't.
Doesn't really forgive him though.
No, it absolutely doesn't forgive him, but I think he thought he was offside. I thought he was offside, not because I had seen it and decided, but because Dan Cook stood next to me, went, he's offside. And so I thought, well, Dan knows his football. He must be. And he definitely thought you're right, it doesn't excuse it. And we'll talk at the end of this section about where this game leaves us and how we feel, But I understood. I got it.
Yeah. We missed stoppage time because we had to go and catch the 21:45 from Wolverhampton.
We did make it.
With time to spare, actually, but we wanted some contingency, and it was, we actually, from the sounds of it, didn't miss too much, except a brilliant Timmy Chestnut's block. And whilst I thought he had his moments yesterday where I was like, oh my God, it was shaky, that block was exceptional, and he deserves praise for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we missed the second Raul miss as well, which was more forgivable because he put it wide and you could see what he was trying to do. But yeah, it is a certain level of horrible, I was going to say torture, that's too extreme, but it's a horrible experience when you're going away from a ground and you're trying to understand what's going on inside the ground by the sound. It was horrendous.
Yeah. It was one of those. I was like, I think nothing's happening, but I can't fully tell.
And you know what? I am grateful we didn't get home at 3 a.m. That is also something I'm grateful for.
It was late enough as it was without catching that train. I think if it had been any later, it would have been... there were a few Fulham fans who I think, whilst we left so there was enough time to briskly walk, there was a few Fulham fans who left, who went and who watched the whole stoppage time and then ran, and they were looking pretty worn out by the time.
I felt pretty worn out by the time we were on the train. It was fun.
And so where this leaves Fulham, well, 9th. There was a very interesting battle now happening, and I promised that we weren't going to spend the podcast talking about whether we're going to qualify for Europe, because I am in agreement with that 3-word review that I have thought it for a while, that as a fan base on the whole, we are getting way too caught up in like, we lose, it's over, we win, it's great.
Yeah.
There is a battle right now. Fulham are amongst several teams that I think goes down to Brentford in terms of teams that could do something special. And I'm just happy that Fulham are in the mix. It's all going to come down to how we perform in the run-in. Some teams will fall away, some teams will flourish, but right now Fulham have given themselves a platform with which to build something special towards the end of the season. And it's like, okay, the Palace defeat was rubbish. We were rubbish. We really made up for it on Tuesday with a win that I don't think many of us were expecting. Even though Wolves are 17th, I think most of us expected that actually this was going to be a really tough night at the end, and so I felt like we've made up a little bit for Saturday. And I guess like that's what Marco will have asked of them pre-match, is like, go out and prove that Saturday is not typical.
Yeah, Saturday is pretty bad, but I agree with you that we've made up for it. And I do think there is, like, the way that football news works, it's very hard not to be that pendulum of reacting to every single result. There's so much to talk about every game and feeling, oh, we're out of the Europe conversation. Oh, now we're back in it. Da, da, da. And while winning away at 17th in the league is not on paper the world's most impressive result, A, breaking our duck at Molineux, I think is great. And B, I think there's a wider sort of point to be made about how we are treating this season, because the disappointment from your West Hams, your Palaces, where we've been terrible and lost games and that we, in inverted commas, should have won, is outweighed so much by the emotional experience of these moments. And I'm coming on and saying Wolves away yesterday is one of the greatest days. It was amazing. I had the best time ever. And that is not to say that I am getting carried away and think this means something for our league position and what this team can do. Like, I'm just saying this as an experience is wonderful.
Yeah. I think as well, there's been like, I know that obviously to finish in these European places, and we don't know what it's going to be, will require some good form towards the end of the season. We can't afford to lose too many games, and if we want to finish in Europe. And there is debate to have whether Europe's going to be helpful for us. There might be lots of people listening to this like, are we ready for it? And I think that would be a fair argument to have, but also there's some people saying, I don't care if we're ready for it, I want a trip to Vilnius on a Thursday.
That's how I feel.
Yeah. But I do think there's been an element of like, this isn't the title race. Like, we're trying to effectively finish 7th or 8th.
Yeah, you are so right.
I think, like, Arsenal can be upset when they lose a game. That probably is the title blown for them. Like, that's, when you're chasing first position, you cannot afford to lose almost any game or draw any game. Like, we've got 11 games left. We probably need about 15 points. And we're probably there or thereabouts. Then it just comes down to a bit of luck and who else does what. Like, we got to win 5 out of 11 to hit that. Like, I just feel like the reaction to Palace, like, we were terrible, and it's fair enough to be critical of the performance. It was bad, but I'm just a bit blown away that everyone keeps reaching to these like gigantic conclusions every time we do play a match. In
defence of people who do reach to gigantic conclusions, I think there is a thing when you watch the Palace game or the West Ham game is another one, because I think that was our worst performance this season. When you think, if we play like that, we have no chance. It's not the individual result, it's the performance and if that's replicated. But having said that, I do really agree with you. I remember listening to a podcast a couple of years ago, not a Fulham one, so not worth my time, obviously, but they were talking about the race for top 4, and they were saying people forget that to finish 4th in the league is not to finish perfectly. You can lose 3 games in a row and still finish 4th. And I think we need to have perspective about that conversation, about finishing 7th, 8th, whatever it be.
Well, look, we can put aside league finishes and Europe to bed, because next up, we are looking ahead to the big one at Old Trafford on Sunday. Part 2 of the Fulhamish podcast. It is Sammy here on the Thursday Club with Elizabeth. We've got some exciting news, Liz, because we have another Fulhamish live show happening at the Half Moon Putney, as per usual, straight after the Tottenham Hotspur game. So 16th of March, it's a 1:30 kickoff, the Spurs game. So head over to the Half Moon. We'll be doing a live podcast recording. We'll do a live rendition of This'll Catch On as well. And we're going to be joined by special guest Paul Cooper, aka Martin Mucklow from This Country fame. And he's been in lots of other dramas. Paul is absolutely brilliant. He's been on the podcast several times as well. Paul is absolutely buzzing to be part of the live show, by the way. So tickets are in the description of this podcast and also in the description on YouTube as well. Grab them now. We've already sold, I think, a fifth of all tickets, and we've barely advertised it really. So get them quick. They do tend to sell out pretty fast. It's a really, really fun occasion every time we do it. We're so grateful that you actually come and watch us do a live podcast. It blows my mind that people want to, but it's the best thing that we do, and the most fun thing, the most rewarding thing that we do, and we love meeting you afterwards in the pub and having a chat and talking all things Fulham. And so, yeah, we'd love it if you could come down to the Half Moon straight after the Spurs game. And fingers crossed, there's a chance it could be a good result.
Yeah, well, we haven't got a great record for live shows, but you know what I would say? It's a great antidote to a disappointing result as well, because you come along, you're feeling a bit dejected, but then you see all your favourite Fulhamish faces up on stage. And you're right, it is absolutely the best thing we do.
We've had it's been a mixed record, I'd say. So I'm thinking the most recent one was the 3-1 loss to Villa at the beginning of the season. There was the 1-1 draw against Palace.
That was difficult to get
last April. Yeah, there wasn't a lot to talk about apart from Palace being amazing, I think. We did beat Sheffield United 3-1, I think last October when we did a live show. That was we did specifically pick that one as we might have a chance here. Spurs is interesting. I don't know when to call that one, but let's worry about that one later. We forgot to mention this in part one, Son's Sasha Lukic for that Spurs game after he picked up his 10th yellow last night.
Yeah, I thought it was quite soft, but I still believe.
Do you think maybe he could come down to the live show if he's not got a match to play?
Yeah, Sasha, if you're watching, come along.
Why not?
We'll bump one of the panellists for you.
Oh yeah, I'm willing to self-sacrifice.
And the panellists will be Sammy.
Yeah, Sasha Lukic can host the whole thing if he's willing to come down to the Half Moon.
Yeah, I think it is going to be so amazing. I'm just so excited to meet everyone, and yeah, it's going to be so fun.
If you're watching this on YouTube, it is all about the FA Cup. We don't know why we have this replica of the FA Cup. We recently found it, but it is perfectly apt for what we're about to talk about. Manchester United on Sunday, the 5th round. This feels like a grudge match where only one side feels that there's a grudge.
That's such a good description.
I imagine to Manchester United, this is just another game. But obviously to us, it is the revisiting of such trauma from 2 years ago. Anyone listening to this that's a Fulham fan will remember that day. It feels so personal, this game.
Yeah. That game 2 years ago is one of the worst moods I've ever been in after a Fulham game. Because of what it represented in that season, we kind of knew that Europe was an outside. It was all about the FA Cup, his cup run. We went to Man United, we were 1-0 up. We were sailing towards Wembley. And then it all went so horribly wrong. I was in such a bad mood that night. And then the next day, because it was on terrestrial, I went into, at the time, my very non-footballing workplace, and everyone had their 2 cents to say about it because they'd caught it. It was just horrendous. I still think about it on, I would say, a sort of weekly basis.
It was akin to receiving bad news. I was like an out-of-body experience that I've suffered, and especially, and I wasn't at Old Trafford. I was in the living room with my dad, and we just sat there shell-shocked, and I'd gone over to his house to watch it, and I just was like, all right, Dad, see you later. And I just drove home. I didn't even put the radio on. It was just silence in the car. Just couldn't believe what I'd witnessed.
I went to see my partner's favourite band that night with him and totally ruined the night by being in the worst mood imaginable. So we're just hopeful that this time, not the case.
Yes. I mean, there is something. It still remains to this day, despite the win last year, and it was almost, I think, a year to the day yesterday that we beat United with that amazing Alex Iwobi goal. But despite that, there still just feels like this aura about when we play Man United, who have been dreadful this season. We are 12 points ahead of them in the table. Can you ever imagine that statement that Fulham, with 10 games to go, are 12 points ahead of Manchester United? Yet, whenever we face them, we just seem to melt. Apart from that one time, the one game at Old Trafford last year, but even that game, I maintain that, yes, we did it in the end, but even the fact that we conceded that Harry Maguire equaliser just shows that there is some sort of mentality issue whenever we face them. I don't know if maybe it's just coincidental, maybe it's just circumstantial, but...
It feels unbelievable that Manchester United have managed to do the double over the best Fulham team we've had in years and years. It's just, there is something about it. And it feels very silly to call Manchester United your bogey team. But these past 3 years being in the Premier League with them, obviously they've done the double over us a number of times. Yeah. There are so many memories at the Cottage of late winners by Fernandes and Garnacho. Obviously away from home this season, the late winner by Xerxes. The season before, Mitrovic missed penalty. And then obviously the big one, when the ball came out of the hat, I know you were annoyed, but I came into the office the next day and I was like, this is the worst possible option. And I stand by that because Manchester City, whatever, they're a better team, would have been bad. Other good teams are in it. Brighton would have been difficult, whatever. But I feel like the emotion of going to Old Trafford, for us, I'm already dreading it. Even though this Manchester United team are pretty bad.
They are pretty bad. I mean, what I think is interesting about United right now is that I think the first 11 is okay.
Yeah.
What they don't have anything of is depth. So I think if Fulham take this game and are in the game 60 minutes and suddenly Fulham we are the team that have the strength and depth, especially considering we rested players on Tuesday, and they've got a day less to prepare for this game because they play Ipswich tonight as we record. The thing that I felt like was most frustrating, though, in the home game recently where we lost 1-0, is that they'd played in the Europa League on the Thursday, a tough game against Rangers. They did win it in the end, but it was a tough match that they had to fight all the way through to the 90th minute. Fulham had 8 days off, if I recall correctly, and actually they looked like the fitter side, the side more up for it. So I really hope we can right some wrongs and just not be so passive. And actually that was one beautiful thing last night, is we've accused that Fulham performance last night felt so different to so many games this year. Front foot, getting, I know that it helped that we scored inside the first 60 seconds. You can't manipulate that every single week, but it did just feel like from the off, we actually kind of, we messed around with it a little bit less. We were much more direct, and I really hope that we take a little bit of that into Sunday.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm so nervous, Sammy.
Yeah, so nervous. I mean, and you look at their side, there is good players everywhere. Rasmus Højlund has been struggling up front. For me, it is all about Bruno Fernandes. Can you contain him? I know there are other good players in this team and they shouldn't be dismissed, but I always think that's my one worry is when I see Fulham face United, if he's on the pitch, I'm always concerned that he can produce something from nothing. And that's kind of what happened in that Everton game. They were 2-0 down and they looked awful, and it was Fernandes that really rescued them. I
thought Amarin was very interesting after the Everton game, watching his post-match clips, because he was asked whether, they were showed fight for the comeback, are you impressed with your team, for all of that, and he was like, no, we were dreadful, we were absolutely dreadful, and they were dreadful. I watched it, but you're right, and I feel it's so difficult to talk about this game free of emotion. I'm trying really hard, but I just feel like Fernandes, obviously Garnacho will either start or come on, those kind of players that just have this little bit of a hoodoo over us. Oh, I'm not feeling good about it.
So here's my one question. Learning from mistakes, right? Clearly the mistake against United 2 years ago was that Marco got the team incredibly up for it. I remember that whole first 65 minutes, and when we scored and went 1-0 up, it was so deserved. We should have been 2 or 3-0 up. We were fantastic. Mm-hmm. It felt like Marco had almost like it was like unchained animals coming out onto that pitch. But obviously that backfired because it was that emotion that took the better of us and took what was a bad situation, i.e. Willian handballed it. It probably would have meant we were down to 10 men and conceded a penalty. A bad situation that was a bit unlucky. It unravelled into something that was 10 times worse once Mitro went off and Silva got sent off.
Yeah.
Do you think that Silva, how will he approach it? Because clearly he'll want to get the team up for this, but we have to learn this time to channel our emotions.
Yes, we do. And Marco Silva's very emotional on the touchline all the time. So I don't think he leads the most calm example for the players in that sense, which is fine. But I mean, no Mitrovic anymore. So that's one good thing that we can enjoy. And also the other thing about that game, that another reason why it was so traumatic was because obviously it resulted in the 8-match ban. But as it happened, we knew there would be a huge ban. We didn't know what. I think Marco's got to keep his head. And I actually think the thing is, I think if Marco keeps his head, if things go against us, which it's Old Trafford, they seem to always go against us, then the players will be able to rally properly. And that was, the fire that lit the touch paper. Yeah, 2 years ago. God, I hate talking about it. I hate thinking about it.
No, I know. I think the thing is it is really hard, isn't it? Because you look at it on paper, you look at United's form at Old Trafford, it has been dreadful. Like the only games they've won have been, games like Southampton, and even then it was
difficult.
And there is a blueprint to go and win at Old Trafford. The fans are on their back. There's going to be protests on Sunday, both from the Fulham Supporters Trust and also the Manchester United Supporters Trust, against the very, very high ticket prices for this. We're not going to come on to that, but this game is going to be played with the kind of, atmosphere of the United fans are pretty angry about everything. That's what I think Fulham have to take advantage of on Sunday. And I think if you start to get to a situation, if Fulham get an early goal in the first half and you frustrate them, you get the crowd, you get the Stretford End booing, you get them all like ramped up. That's when I think Fulham can take advantage. And we saw on Tuesday that actually Fulham can be clinical. And that's what I hope Fulham. I just have this weird feeling with Fulham that we'll play the first half. We'll have played really well, and it'll be 0-0, and we'll have missed 2 or 3 golden chances. And that's why I hope that Fulham this time can just put it to bed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been I've spoken with a lot of Fulham fans. Everyone in the team. A lot of friends about this game, and the feeling has been, I would say, very split. A lot of people saying, well, I just got a feeling we're going to do it this time. Like they are terrible, and they are. And no Manchester United fan this season is thinking that they're performing to an acceptable standard. But, and I'm sure everyone's picked up from this chat, it just feels like things always go against us at Old Trafford, apart from the one time they didn't. Yeah.
But even then, there was it was close. More practically, lineup. Right. I like sometimes with these big games to go through it position by position. So
Stephen Bender in goal.
Bloody hell.
It was a really funny joke.
Yeah. So Leno in goal.
Yeah, obviously.
Robinson.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Do you think it is a return to pretty much exactly how Fulham have been, in the Forest game and all of that? Is it Bassey and Anderson? What about Diop?
I'd like to see Bassey and Diop. Personally, I just feel like Diop was a titan yesterday night. But I'm not angry at the thought of Bassey and Anderson. But I would say Bassey and Diop.
The problem with Anderson now is I don't think Anderson's done anything particularly. He didn't do anything last night to warrant being dropped.
I think that, obviously I don't know how these conversations happen in the dressing room, but if Marco had hypothetically been like, we're seeing ahead of the big game on Sunday, we're seeing you, we're seeing Diop, and then we're going to make a decision. I don't think Anderson could quibble with Diop having had a better performance than him, even if he was really decent yesterday.
Is there a chance this is actually, we're kind of going position by position, but it's important for this particular area that Marco does something a bit radical and goes 5 at the back?
I wouldn't be opposed to it. Would you?
No, because I think...
Sorry.
No, it took me a while to really think of my answer
Dissipate
there.
the tension about us thinking about it.
I think the only thing that I would understand if Silva went for 5 at the back is because we've tried 4 at the back against United twice and it's not worked.
Yeah, you are right.
And you are going like for like against Amarim's system.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, if you're going like for like, you're basically making a punt that you actually think that our players are better than your players, system on system.
Which I like individually, obviously there are some absolute superstars in that Manchester United team, but I think the way that we've been coached, it's fair enough to argue that that's sometimes.
And that allows Diop to play.
Yeah.
Because you presume poor old Jorge, he did great last night, but he's not gonna keep out Calvin for a game like this.
Let's do position by position, but let's also do our 5 versus 4 option.
Okay, so if it's 5, let's say it is 5, because I have this weird feeling that he might stick with it after it works on Tuesday.
The 3 big dogs in the centre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Timmy on the right, because there's the other thing about the 5 at the back is I do think with Timothy Castagna and his like slightly like it's not like he's not out of form, but it's I feel like it gives him a bit more protection.
Yeah, I agree. I think it gives it helps him out a little bit. And I agree he's not out of form. I think he's tired and I can't blame him at all. No.
And then it's Berger and Lukic. Fortunately, obviously, Lukic's suspension is Premier League only, thank God.
Yes.
So he is completely fine to play for this game. It's just a Premier League suspension. Well, then effectively it's as we were on the rest of the pitch last night, because you would then probably play Andreas, Traore, and then it's up front, isn't it?
I'm keeping Muniz after last night.
Wow.
Yeah, he was great yesterday. Player of the match. I don't know how you drop him.
I don't know. I can't make that call. That's why I guess Marco gets paid and I don't.
Yeah. Well, I can make that call. So, Fulham Football Club, hit me out. No, I'm checking.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Yeah. I mean...
Raul, for me, though, it is just that, like, big game energy.
BGE.
Just feel like...
I don't know, Sammy. I do know. I'm keeping Muniz. And I loved Andreas last night. He's definitely starting for me.
Yes.
I mean... Smith Rowe's injured, right? So he would
There's
start
not a lot
anyway.
of choice.
But I'd say Andreas, even if Smith
No, but wait, hang on. Iwobi. How do you get Iwobi in?
But here's the thing. I don't think if I was managing, I would go for the 5 at the back. So then I'd be putting Iwobi in. But for the 5 at the back, for the sake of the 5 at the back, maybe we are.
There's no way. I don't think.
Okay, hang on. Let's think about this again.
If it's 5, I think Iwobi's on the bench.
You see the cogs whirring in our heads.
This is so hard.
This is hard. I would love to be in a position where we could bring Adama on as an impact sub, personally. But I don't see how we get there. So maybe Iwobi does start on the bench.
Unless you drop Adama and then it's Andreas and Iwobi.
Iwobi on the right.
But it doesn't...
I don't love Iwobi on the right.
I also don't love Andreas on the left. I mean, it was weird. It was hard to know exactly where Andreas played. And I think it was almost like Traore's was a second strike. It was a weird formation. It was quite hard to get your head around.
Yeah, maybe going bamboozle Man United with that.
We're going to bamboozle Man United because we can't work it out.
I think it's 4 at the back. It picks itself. It's really obvious.
Yes.
If it's 5 at the back, then we're deciding basically 2 of 3 for those positions. I just don't I think Andreas provides too much in set pieces, and his passes yesterday.
And his work rate as well. Yeah. There were so many times yesterday where Andreas.
I thought he had a fabulous game.
Yeah, it's all of, and I know like it's really easy to say this about Andreas. It's been the cliche since he joined, but there were so many moments yesterday where he panicked a Wolves defender into a rushed clearance that would go out for a throw in, and it's not like hugely noticeable, but it's like it's the work rate that he puts in for this team, and you just know that Marco's there loving it.
Yeah. Yeah, and me too.
And the point to prove against a former club. Yeah. I think it's really tricky. As you say, if it's 4, it picks itself. It is Iwobi. It's, when it's Andreas in the 10 and you get Adama, you can keep all of them. But I think if it's the 5 at the back, someone needs to get dropped. And on last night's showing, it's Iwobi.
Yeah, I do think we can obviously change things, like bringing Iwobi off the bench is a good option.
It was like having a Rolls Royce off the bench last night, having Alex Iwobi.
Yeah, I'm not sure that cliche works, but
I just thought he was classy. I just thought he came on, and I just thought it was like, what a luxury. And that was the whole thing about last night, wasn't it? Is just as maybe we were getting a bit tired and Wolves might get back into the game, on rocks the A squad just to protect the 3 points. And Willian just looked so classy. So
yeah, Willian looked great. I hope he comes off the bench as well and just doesn't repeat what happened last time.
Just let it go in. That'll all about. If the same thing happens again, Willian, just let the ball go in. Do not handball it.
I feel like he didn't quite have control of what his hand was doing.
No, he didn't. But just let it go. Just if Jadon Sancho suddenly pops up somehow back from Chelsea and is through on goal, just let him score. We'll still win. We just need 11 players on the pitch, ideally. Let's do some emails and some correspondence.
Yeah, lovely.
I got this one from Alex Bomer, who was on the train with us last night.
Oh, yes.
He said, "Hi, Sammy, Alex Bomer here." He asked the question and he's gone out and he's found his own research, basically.
Hell yeah.
Because we talked about, has Fulham ever scored in the opening 90 seconds of both halves in a Premier League game? He can confirm we've never scored in the first 90 seconds of both halves in a Premier League game. He then says, I couldn't be bothered to look back further than that. Probably too late to whack on the Fulhamish pod, but I thought I'd let you know in case you were interested. Not too late for the pod. It's made the pod.
It's made the pod. Yeah, that on some level doesn't surprise me, but yeah, it was amazing last night.
We say 90 seconds. Muniz, I think it was like 61 or 62 seconds.
Within the first 62 seconds.
That would be an even like nicer, that would be an even nicer stat.
On the extended highlights the club put up, they put up the whole of the first minute of just the sort of ball bouncing around a little bit and then Sess scoring. I thought that was a lovely touch. I
didn't realise until half time that it was that quick. It didn't strike me. I thought it was at least 2 or 3 minutes in.
Really? Oh, I don't know. I knew it was instant. It felt like.
It just didn't. I felt like there'd been a bit more play than that. I thought it was maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I hadn't quite realised that it was actually for opening 60 seconds. I was just having such a great time.
Weren't we all?
This one from Michael Cox says, great win last night. Couple of little stats you may like for Thursday's pod. Yesterday was Marco Silva's 36th away win for Fulham in the 36th different month he's managed for us.
Oh, Michael Cox.
More impressive for me is it's the 28th different ground we've won at under him, 29 if you include Craven Cottage. Also, we've now scored 2+ goals in 6 away games in the Premier League. Our previous record was 4 around autumn 2012, winning 2-1 at Wigan, 4 high-scoring draws at Arsenal, Reading and Southampton. Hodgson was fantastic, and I thought he would forever be our greatest ever manager, but Silva is getting so close if he isn't there already. Never, ever before have I believed in a manager in every game. There isn't a fixture possible where I wouldn't have some hope. Previously, you could write off some, not under Marco. Wondered if you agree with that.
Of course I agree with that. And I'm not only riding the emotion high from last night, although I am a little bit, but we've shown throughout his tenure that we can mix it with the very, very top.
Yeah. Some fantastic stats there, Michael. Thank you for getting in touch.
Great stats.
Clayton Bricklemeyer says, Sammy, please consider this as an email for the Thursday show purposes. I have 2 items for the good of the order. Number 1, are we late enough in the season that we go into each match day with a list of results we want to see out of the other matches? If so, what am I rooting for this weekend? And what am I rooting for in the European competitions? Is it as simple as wanting English teams to win all the cups? I see what he's saying here. It's not just, we want Brighton or Villa to lose.
Yeah.
What do we need to happen in Europe?
Well, my understanding is that the 5th place is pretty sewn up for England. We should be fine.
Yes. I also read an article on BBC yesterday that it will take something pretty extraordinary in the last 16 round for us not to, and it's all the way down. So probably you need, unfortunately, that lot up the road to do okay in the Conference League.
Yeah, but I see that happening.
Yeah, you need United and Tottenham to do quite well in the Europa. I think you look at Arsenal, Liverpool, and Villa's draws in the Champions League, and I think there's a good chance 2 out of 3 make that, especially with Villa's draw against Club Bruges, who you would imagine will probably make it. Then there's probably an English quarter-final. So there's probably an English team in the semi-final. As far as I understand it, it will take some sort of kind of mathematical quirk for England not to get that. So that means it's 5 places in the Champions League, which means it does definitely get knocked down to 7th.
Yeah.
I think for the... We promised we wouldn't talk about this, didn't
Shall we try and figure this out live on air? I'm sure that would be very compelling.
No. We need you want Liverpool to win the Carabao.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like Newcastle could finish in European competition.
But you want them to win, yeah.
But Liverpool is just a safer bet.
Come on, you Reds.
FA Cup, I'm genuinely like, I don't know. Well, I want us to win the FA Cup.
We want to win the FA Cup, and ideally, I think the thing is also we obviously want to win the FA Cup, and we'd like a lot of the very big dogs, the elite dogs, have been knocked out already. Your Liverpools, etc., your Arsenals. So we want to win it. I would be delighted to see Brighton go out this weekend because I also don't want to face them.
Well, yeah.
Like, that is another thing. I think we kind of just want what's best for us in a traditional sense. But yeah, it was funny last night. Like, we had Palace Villa and we had Brighton Bournemouth at the same time as our game. And we were thinking, well, Brighton Bournemouth, we have no idea really who we want to win that. The group is so bunched that it's really difficult at this point to guess in the Premier League who we want to win and not.
Yeah, I'm fully the opinion all we want is for Fulham to win matches. You've got to get towards 60 points. If you get towards 60 points, you're going to be there or thereabouts. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I love the permutations when it gets to it, but it's not it yet.
Yeah, and especially like when you get games like last night when Brighton do face Bournemouth, and you're just like, probably a draw.
I want both teams to lose.
Yeah. I'm actually going to save Clayton's second question for next week because it looks like an incredibly Jack Collins question, mostly about Ireland.
Ooh, I am half Irish.
Okay, do you want it?
No.
Okay. It's basically about which Irish teams we might be able to face in Europe next season.
Yeah. No, I don't want it.
I have noticed that there's been this whole thing about the Irish football, like it's all like the attendances and all that in Irish football are taking off. Jack's gonna be so angry that I've decided to bring that particular subject up on the one podcast.
He can't make
that he's not here. This one from Damien Bird. Hi Pod, you likely don't care how many times I've listened to or emailed. No, we always care, Damien.
I want an absolute number I've listened to. X podcast, and this is my X number.
Yeah, but anyway, he's not played by the rules. Quick question. I've only recently noticed that Robinson is now our default vice captain, having replaced Leno in December. I don't recall this being discussed before, but why does the pod think this was changed, and how do we think Leno feels about it? Feels like an odd thing to change mid-season, especially given that our main captain rarely starts, so vice captain is quite a big deal at Fulham.
So we had this discussion because I think it was a Spurs game when Robinson first walked out with the armband. I don't love a goalkeeper captain, if I'm honest. I feel like they can't really control the game because they're not properly in the mix.
Yeah.
And I think the Robinson move, it made sense for that. He's become one of our senior players. He's our most important player in many ways. And I also think there is a little bit of a thing. We're all a little bit worried about how long we'll be able to keep Robinson. It ups his price tag a little bit, I think, to have the captain's armband. And equally, it says to him, you're really valued at this club. So it makes sense for me. It's a great move.
Yeah, I do think that the goalkeeper element of Leno being captain is probably the main reason why because the obvious problem with having a goalkeeper captain is that generally the captain, and it doesn't really happen in football like it does in other sports like rugby, but it means that they're the ones that are supposed to have the dialogue with the referee.
And actually there has been quite a push this season, last season, that the referees are yellow carding. When there's a melee, they yellow card the players that try to confront them that aren't the captain, and they call the captains. And it is, I mean, just thinking about that Mitrovic situation 2 years ago, like imagine Leno sprinting halfway out of the pitch to have that convo.
I did wonder cynically
Go on.
if Fulham were trying to be clever with Leno as the captain, because effectively it meant that the whole "no, I only speak to the captain" problem was suddenly an issue for the referee.
Well,
because he would go he'd be like, "No, I speak to the captain." You're like, "What? He's in goal. He can't speak to the captain. I'm who you've got."
But I feel like also we had a designated player for a bit that was Andreas, and then he got dropped. I don't know.
I don't personally think it's all. I don't feel like the players really care who's the vice captain that much. I think it's like.
Do you not think? I really think I think it's important.
I don't care who's the club captain.
No, I think it's important. The vice captain in this sense is the player that is captain every week.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying it's like, oh, they like couldn't care less and they won't even wear the armband. But I think being club captain is an honour. I think vice captain is just procedural.
No, I disagree with you.
Yeah.
I think it's leadership on the pitch. I think it is not only an honour, but it's a show in your abilities as a leader and a player.
Yeah. That'll do for the pod today. But we will see what happens on Sunday. Massive game.
You're there, aren't you, Sammy?
I am there, I think. I actually need to sort my travel. I only found out last minute I was able to go, which I am chuffed about.
Sammy's very conveniently got a work meeting in Manchester nearby.
Don't expose me, Liz.
Yeah.
But yes, basically. How are you going to be watching it?
I'm going to be watching through my fingers on the telly. I'm already feeling nervous, so we'll see.
Yeah, well, we will be back on Monday evening, maybe Tuesday morning by the time it's out, to dissect everything that happens up at Old Trafford. Good, bad, ugly. Please be good. Please be good, because we want to stay in the FA Cup.
We want that to grow inside.
I'm holding the FA Cup for those that are listening, but come on.
Sammy is 1 second away from giving it a kiss and drinking from it.
If you're heading up to Manchester, safe journey.
Yeah.
Maybe see you there. If you're watching at home, no doubt we'll all be very much just praying, hoping that this time is the time that we can get past United at Old Trafford. There'll also be a quick take by us as well straight after the game, and just fingers crossed it's a celebratory one. Fingers crossed. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you so much.
What are we naming the pod?
We are naming it, well, we have to go for a Sess one.
Of course.
So many good options, obviously. My favourite is James Wilson's first Molineux success.
Easy for you to say. Thank you very much for watching. Let's hope we can do the business on Sunday. You Whites.